I'm very pleased to be speaking with Falko Paetzold, founder of the Center for Sustainable Finance and Private Wealth and Managing Director of the Competence Center for Sustainable Finance and Private Wealth at the University of St. Gallen. Falko, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
You've been running impact investing programs for the next generation for over a decade. From your experience, what are the biggest gaps in how next-gen wealth holders are currently being prepared to deploy capital for impact?
The important barriers for members of very, very wealthy families, members of these families that really want to have impact, differ quite a bit from geography to geography, we find, and of course also from family to family. In particular, for example, in Asia, one thing that we see is that a very important barrier within those families can be the very strict hierarchical structures, where younger family members, who often are the ones who are very interested in impact, have very little say. In other families that might be very different, oftentimes then it's simply a lack of knowledge about how to have impact with wealth, and oftentimes also really a lack of advisors that can help those next gens or families generally implement their impact strategies.
In your keynote here in Hannover at the symposium Mobilizing Private Wealth as a Resource for Solving Global Crises, you suggested that advisors can act as a structural barrier. What exactly is driving that? And is it a question of incentives, mindset, or capability?
It's really a mix of exactly all those aspects that you mentioned. So in my work and the work of colleagues over the past 2+ years, we really have seen that advisors, especially within mainstream large banks, but also the typical advisor within family offices that has been trained in a standard finance curriculum, are really important barriers because they simply find this whole sustainability field to be too complicated and taking too much time to actually really understand what the wealth holder in front of them actually understands under the field sustainability, what matters for them, which themes would be the right ones for this person to focus on, which sustainable investing approaches, and so on. So there's a very, very important structural gap in wealth holders understanding their role very much so as a sparring partner, as a coach for wealth holders to help those wealth holders identify their own approach to sustainability and impact.
And do you think advisors are missing an opportunity to engage with wealth holders by not discussing this important topic?
Yeah, it really is a dramatic omission because especially if you think about how the whole wealth management, asset management industry has moved and is moving from, for example, active management to passive management, and also how an increasingly important theme is the whole theme about fees. Here is a topic where advisors can really provide value to their clients by helping those clients unpick something that is complex, not in the sense of financial markets or what type of models can be thrown at these problems, but really the complexity within the client. Helping the client understand what are the topics that you care about and why, and how can I, advisor, help you solve those problems in the real world. This is a service that really helps advisors build a much stronger relationship with their clients and prove their value.
Beyond knowledge, you emphasized that the impact journey itself is really hard. What makes it so difficult for next-gen investors to move from intention to implementation?
The one slide that participants of my program still remember after years is exactly that one slide that I showed, that really simply shows, basically like any innovation adoption process, if a topic is new, there are barriers to be overcome, and the result for wealth holders is it's really an up and down journey with their motivation, with their energy over time. Because simply the key point here is you're not wrong, you're just early. And that means that you really have to do things differently. You need advisors to advise you differently. You need different types of investment solutions, and those are not easy to come by.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that next-gen have with regards to impact investing or philanthropy?
There's a really, really important misconception, not just amongst next-gens, but really amongst private investors. And for example, Julian Köbel, Florian Heb, and colleagues have just published another paper that shows this very, very clearly, in that within the community of sustainable investing experts and researchers, it is very clear that the one thing that one has to focus on if one is interested in impact is what's called investor impact, which is the impact that an investor has on a company by providing growth capital for a company to grow, that's private markets, or by changing something about the practices of a company. But retail investors, private investors generally, that's what their research also finds, what we see all the time is, don't understand that and confuse company impact with impact in the real world. Company impact meaning the impact that the firm has on the real world, and they will focus on investing into green companies. But just because you buy shares from another investor, shares in a company that happens to be green, changes nothing about the impact that this company has in the real world. So there's a really important confusion here between what is company impact, nice green companies that doesn't cause any impact investing there, and investor impact, which is really how investors can have impact in the real world.
There is a clear demand from the next generation to see and measure impact. What are the biggest challenges in delivering that in practice?
Measuring impact is a very important topic and has been for a long time in this field. There is interesting work also for example, by Julian Kolbe out of University of St. Gallen, who looked into this topic quite a bit and identified there are various frameworks how to measure impact, and they're being applied by different families, different family offices, different banks to different degrees. The IMP, Impact Management Framework is an important one here. But you know, an important thing to consider is two things. One is impact always depends on the individuals who are experiencing this impact. And that's really difficult to compare from geography to geography and from impact theme to impact theme. So impact very quickly becomes difficult to compare. Also, impact is quite difficult to measure because if you really would want to measure the impact that you had, you would have to run randomized control trials, similar to what we do in vaccine research. So what is really more important oftentimes is instead of fixating on measuring to a high degree of accuracy impact that is achieved, think more about how can this investment have an impact. Think about this beforehand, more by thinking through the theory of change, how an investment to this can actually lead to any impact. So really thinking before the investment rather than trying to fixate on measuring the impact after.
And looking ahead, what would need to change in education, advisory models, or the broader wealth ecosystem for next-gen capital to be deployed at scale for impact?
What we see, especially in our large-scale training programs, really for advisors that we've been running, especially out of Singapore now for thousands of private bankers from various banks, and our training programs for wealth holders, is there is a very significant gap in very basic knowledge about sustainable investing and impact investing, which really starts with what are the different approaches that exist. There are 5 different approaches, like exclusion criteria, simply not having exposure to investments in coal. That lets you sleep well at night, but it has no impact. Over to ESG, thematic investing, voting and engagement, and impact investing, which is really focused on impact. Most advisors and wealth holders don't even know these basic differences, and that leads to a lot of confusion.
Falko, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.